Hey everyone, welcome back to this new video, and in this video we are going to talk about how you can set up an AI agent that can query custom data from a Supabase table, and it's basically a RAG model but just for numeric values. Let's jump right into it and let's check out what this model can do. Also, the entire model is downloadable in the description, so you can just download the JSON file. Then you open up a new workspace, you click import from file, and then you drag and drop the JSON file in there, and then you have exactly this same layout, and you can play around with it and just change some prompts. But we're also going to build the entire workflow from scratch, so you can see how all of this works and what each individual node is doing. All right, so before we start into building and setting up the Supabase tables and all of that stuff, let's just go ahead and check what the system can actually do. This is a pretty complex prompt, and it's going compare the best-selling product from September 2024 with September 2025 and tell me the percentage change. Also give me the second and third best-selling product of July 24 and June 25. So here we go. Let's set that off. And yeah, how the system works in a nutshell is first it generates a SQL. So we have an AI agent here that is going to create a SQL query. Then we're going to execute the query on our tables that we have stored in Supabase. Then we combine all of the data so that the chatbot has it easier to generate an answer. All right, so here we go. We have, in comparing best-selling products 24 and 25, the top product shifted from the shower filter to the pitcher filter, and we have a decrease of 11.53%. The total units for the best products. Okay, so the best product was sold less. Yep. Okay, so it works really, really well. If the system for some reason doesn't work with you, sometimes you have issues with the SQL, so that the bot doesn't generate a good SQL, and then that can't be executed. If that is the case, I'm also going to show you how you can troubleshoot that. All right, so before we jump in the actual workflow and building it, we first need to generate some data. We're going to use ChatGPT just to generate some sample data. If you already have data, then you can just jump forward into the Supabase setup. All right, so let's generate some sample data. Let's just go to ChatGPT, and there we can say generate, I'm just gonna dictate it, generate a 300 row data example table with extensive data about the sales data of a toy store and their report from 2024. So have some type of sales ID, product, how much sold, costs, revenue, all of this. Just have an extensive table of 300 rows. All right, so we are going to create two different tables. One is going to be the sales data of 2024 of a toy store, and then of the same toy store, we are generating some sales data from 2025 so we can compare it with each other. All right, here we go. So we have here's the sales ID. Then we have revenue, units sold, cost per unit, product, date. All right, here we go. So we are going to download this, and now we're going to say generate the sales data from 2025 with the same columns but different data to simulate the sales year of 2025. Okay, let's actually see if it generated 300 rows. Yep, it did. All right, so once we have, okay, that was very quick. Let's see if it's actually different. Okay, yep, it seems to be different. Here we go. All right, so let's just download that one. And now we have both of those tables, so we can now go to Supabase. All right, so if you just go to Supabase, then this is your dashboard. And once you're here, you can just create a new project. And here we are just doing sales data, toy store, and here we go. Now we're just gonna make up some type of password. Make sure that you copy that password and put it somewhere safe, because we're going to need it later when we are doing our credentials, when we are basically connecting our Supabase to our n8n server through Postgres. Now we create a new project. And once that is done, we can go into the table editor. And now we are going to click create a table. We call that sales data 2025 or 2024. Now we click into import data from CSV, and we are taking the 2024 toy sales data. Put it in here. So what is really, really important is that you always have some type of ID, like a sales ID or whatnot, that whenever you will see it in the next step. Because if we click save now, then we will get a warning, which is that we don't really have a like a primary key. What that means is we are not referring to any of the values. And we need a value that is always changing, that it needs to be different every single time. So if we click sales data, then we know that, or the sales ID, then we know that it's always going to be different. If you don't have that in your data, then just create a column like this. For example, if this is the data, then you can just copy paste the entire table, take it out, copy it here, and then you can just do product ID. Then you can do a 1 here, and then you do a 1. So then you do equals 1, this plus 1, and then you can just drag that all the way up to the 300, and then you have a perfect field. But you need to re-import this new table with the new ID field. We can go ahead and generate the table. All right, here we go. Now we have our table. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing with the other table. So just click here for a new table and do exactly the same name, but with 2025. So sales data 2025. All right, then we're gonna do import data with CSV. We're gonna do this one. Here's another sales ID from 2025. We import that, then we have the same key again. Also with the type, make sure when it's text that you have text. But if you have something with decimals, then make sure you use float. If there's no decimals in a number, then make sure you use int. All right, so let's import this one. And once we have that, then we already set up our entire database and we can start building the workflow in n8n. All right, we are back in n8n. First, let's grab a chat trigger. So we take this one, then we are going to connect this one with an AI agent. This can stay the same. So because we want to have the message from the chat, it doesn't have to be a chat. It could be Slack. It could be some type of Sheets trigger. That's actually the next one that I'm going to do, that this base is always, or that the Supabase data tables are always automatically taking in the new data. This is something in another video, but this is only with static data as of now. But this is the workflow of how you can execute those queries. So we got to connect that to some type of AI model. Here we're just going to use Open Router, and we're connecting it to 4.1 mini. Another way of what you could do here is if you actually don't want it to always use the same model, because sometimes the SQL requests that we are writing are more complex. Sometimes they're easier. You could actually do a dynamic model, which always changes. But this is also another video. So we have this set up, and now we also want some memory. So just some simple memory in order that the system is remembering when we're referring to something. All right, so when we go into the agent, then what is going to be really, really important is the system prompt, because currently we only have your helpful assistant, but since we want this AI agent to run SQL queries, so let's also name it like this, SQL generator, then we also need to make sure that the system prompt is good. Okay, how do we do that? It's actually pretty simple. So we can just take the system prompt from what we have here in the workflow that you already got. Just take that system prompt and put it into the system message here. Change it to expression, then open it up, copy that out, and put in the new one. All right, so now we have to change a few things. For example, we don't have the same columns, and yeah, that should be good. So we don't have the same tables anymore, and we don't have the same columns anymore. So what we can do now is just take that, go into ChatGPT and say, this is my current system prompt for my SQL generator. The system prompts work well, but I need it with the new data, such as sales ID, date, product, unit sold, cost per unit, revenue. Here are the two tables that this SQL query generator needs to relate to. Make sure to update the system prompt and put in the new columns and the new tables available. Leave everything else the same. All right, here we go. So now we got that. Now we're going to give it some sample data, which is going to be this. So table 1, which is called, and now we have to go back into Supabase, so which is sales data 2024. sales data 2024. It's very important that you actually line that up right. Okay, so technically that should work now. We have sales data 2021 and sales data 2020. Okay, so this one technically should work. So we can just let that one run. And then we're good. All right, let's go back and copy that paste in so that it gets the sample data. All right, take that out. And now we can also say table 2 called sales data 2025. All right, so now we are getting a new system prompt. Okay, so that system prompt, the table, I don't know if that works well. Okay, so this is not necessarily what we want. Let's just go back and take the old system prompt and say, use this format, but include the new data I just gave you. Because we don't want some type of tables. All right, here we go. Cost per unit, sales ID. Yeah, that should be all correct. Sales ID, date. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. So once you have that with your custom data, then just take that and put it into the system prompt here, and then you're already good. All right, that's all. So let's check if that actually works. Pull some data from June 2024. Let's see what type of output it's going to give us. Okay, it gives us some SQL. All right, now we are going to do Postgres. And this was probably one of the most frustrating ones, but because you have to set it up, but everything else is pretty simple. So we want to execute an SQL query because this is what this agent generates, and then we want to take it in here. All right, once we are in the node, then we need to connect first with it. So how that works is we just create new credentials, and then we are going to be on this page. What we now need is we need to go to the project that we just set up with the data, make sure that it's the right project. So make sure that this is actually the project we want to refer to. Then we need to go to database, and then we're going to click connect right here. And then here's the information that we need. So we just copy that out for the host and fill that out. Then we have the port, which is here. So we're going to change that. Then we are having the database. This is already going to be correct. Then here's the username. So do this one. And now we are going to need the password that we set up for this. All right, once you have all of this, if you forgot your password, then you can just reset it in the project settings. Once you have all of this, click save, and then you should be connected. All right, now make sure that you edit this again and make sure that it has the right name. So it would be Toy Store Sales Data, because this is what it is. So now what we need to do is we need to execute the output that we get from the SQL generator. And this is very simple. We only have to execute the query. We only have to drag and drop that in here, execute it, and then we're getting an error. All right, so let's check. All right, so now we can actually go into some troubleshooting. So how do we troubleshoot this? Because this is likely that you're going to run into the exact same problem. So this setup is all correct, but this is not right. So let's just copy paste the entire thing, go back into ChatGPT and say, I get this error running my Postgres node. And then what we can also give it is, what always helps is the system prompt. I have a SQL AI agent that is generating SQL code. Here's the system prompt of it. Tell me how to fix it by either changing the system prompt or doing some changes in the SQL node. I think it's going to be the system prompt. So make sure this is changed. Okay, here we go. So if we give it that, then it should give us a new system prompt. So it tries to extract something instead of a proper name and time. Okay, your date column is being interpreted as text. All right, so here we go. This is just, okay, so this is going to be the system prompt. All right, so now we can just say, rewrite this system prompt to include the new updates. Only output the system prompt. All right. So let's give it the system prompt again. And it always depends on, really, this is a lot of figuring out because your data columns are going to be different. And then when you run SQL queries, then sometimes it just doesn't work. So you really need to go back and forth a lot with ChatGPT, but it can give you really, really, really good help really quick. All right, so let's just put that in there. Now the output should be working, and let's run this. All right, here we go. So now we just got 24 items. So if we want to build a response on 24 items, so if we just put a response agent after that, then we get the issue that it's going to generate a response for each of those items. And this is not what we want. So what we need is a code. And this code, what it's going to do is it is going to take all of the different outputs that we got, which you can see here, all of the different outputs, and it's going to synthesize it into one, so we only get one response from the AI agent. Otherwise, it's just going to loop through each of those outputs. So as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like whatever, 30 outputs, or 24, I think, what we said here. It's going to loop through all of them and make you 24 answers. You don't want that. So for this, you can just simply copy and paste the code that you already had provided. And now it's going to take the entire JSON and puts it into one output. All right, and now we are at the last step. So we only have to take another AI agent, and then we need to change this, define below. And what we need to do here are a few things. So first of all, we need to get the user message. But here we have to change a small little, or let's say user question. But we have to change a small little thing. So when we go to the chat and we drag and drop that in here, make sure that this is an expression so you can drag and drop. If we drag and drop that in here, so the chat input, then we need to make sure that this is not period item, but this must be period first, and then open up those, and then it works. Why exactly that is, I don't know, but this works. All right, and now we get the SQL data. So technically, you can just take the exact same node here and just copy paste it. It does exactly the same thing, but I wanted to show everything, how it's set up from scratch. So now we take the SQL data from the code node, and now we're just going to put that in here. And once we have that, we are just going to add a system prompt, which we are getting from this agent. And again, you can just download it in the description of this video. There's some type of either Google Form or Google Drive where you can download it, or Gumroad. All right, so we have now this, and now we're going to execute it. All right, we have to submit a model. So we're just going to take GPT-4 Mini again. And now this node should be running. All right, here we go. There's our output, and it's perfectly tailored towards the custom data. All right, so what you have to do now is you have to test this entire thing. So you can just say, hey, I set up the entire workflow. Give me some questions, give me 10 different questions that I could run and make them increasingly more difficult until they are very difficult and very complex. So we're just going to ask ChatGPT in order to give us some example questions, because if we run each of the example questions and all of those work, then we already have covered a lot. So here's some easy ones. What's the total numbers of units sold in 2025? So let's try that. All right, here we go. If you want to double check that, then just go to Claude, drag and drop in your, so basically it would look like this. Just go to Claude AI, drag and drop both of your files in here. Usually it works better if you convert them into PDFs and not into CSVs, and then just ask exactly the same question. If Claude says the same thing as your agent, then there's a good possibility that it's working. So let's go into some more complex questions though, like for example, very, very advanced. So let's see if this one can handle it, because this is going to test your SQL code generator. Because now the SQL queries are going to be a lot harder. So here we ran into an issue. How would you troubleshoot that? Well, you would just take the same thing. So you copy and paste the entire thing. Then you go into ChatGPT. You can say my post node or Postgres node got this error. here's the system prompt of my AI agent that is generating the SQL query. Then we just give it the system prompt again. And now we can say output only the system prompt by updating the system prompt so that the SQL query is generated correctly and can run through the Postgres node. So this is basically how you can troubleshoot every single problem that you run in this, because this is really the factor. What you can also do in another video, which I haven't made yet, but you can generate a dynamic brain, which basically chooses the model based on the difficulty of the query. So in this case, we're only using GPT-4o1 mini. But what if the more complex the query is, then we can choose a different model, like for example, o1. And then we should get better queries. But in this case, let's just take the new system prompt and let's see if this is going to work. All right, so this is the new system prompt. Let's just execute it and let's see if it's generating a better system prompt. Technically, it should work now. Here we go. There it is. So this is how you can troubleshoot your entire system. If you just run through 10 of those questions and you just troubleshoot it in this exact way, then you have a pretty solid system. If you get more data, then just start adding more tables into your database. So just do more tables right here. And then, yeah, this is the entire video. As you can see, everything works. You know how to troubleshoot. So enjoy, have fun with the system, and I see you in the next video. Bye-bye.